welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Making Monsters. I'm Taylor Dahl. We're joined today by AJ Black. He's a publisher for BC Eagles Insider, part of 24/7 Sports, obviously covering Boston College football. And so I'm super excited today to get into one of the Bears draft picks. We've been going kind of through the list of the draft picks, getting to know them a little bit more, the X's and O's side, the personality side, what the Bears can expect from them, because I do think that several of the draft picks this year will be making an impact on the Bears and be potentially starting very quickly. And so today that brings us to offensive tackle Ozzy Trapilo. He is a second round pick, 56th pick by the Bears. One of the things that I remember reading about him, it did say he was named the most pro-ready tackle in Bleacher Report's scouting department when they did their article on that. So we'll get into some of that. But AJ, I really appreciate your time and hopping on and talking some Ozzy with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Taylor. I'm really looking forward to talking to you.
Of course. So I do want to say, side note, so down here, I cover the Bears, but I also work at the flagship for the Jacksonville Jaguars also. And we have a guy named Tom McManus here that went to Boston College, played football at Boston College. He told me right away, he knew Ozzy because he played with his dad, or they were kind of overlapped a little bit of the time, and then both played for the Saints for a little bit too. And so he immediately was like, Ozzy is the most, if you could just, the epitome of a Chicago Bear is Ozzy Trapilo. And so I loved hearing that. And I'm sure that kind of means like the rugged, tough side, but also just a good dude, because that's kind of what we embrace in Chicago. So let's just start there. His dad, Steve, also was the one that he played at Boston College too. And so Ozzy kind of followed that path and also played football. He's a big guy, 6'8", 315-ish, 310. That's what we're seeing in a lot of the reports. So talk a little bit about that to start. Did he come into his playing at Boston College that big, or did you guys see a little bit of growth at his time there?
So yeah, he definitely got bigger as he came along. He was about 6'7", 6'8" when he got in, and then filled out. He was thrown in as a starter in 2022 when there was a big change in Boston College's offensive line. They brought in a new offensive line coach. I mean, Bears fans, do not go back and look up statistics from that year. It was a disaster for everyone at BC. Ozzy struggled. He was a brand new starter. They threw him out there. He got his lumps. But you know what? That offensive line coach left, Dave DeGuglielmo. He was a guy that had a lot of NFL experience. They brought back Matt Applebaum, who was the original recruiter of Ozzy Trapilo. He grew. Like the amount of like just development from 2022 to when he graduated last year is very, very clear. He's smart, articulate, like a leader, just a great guy. But he's a tough as nails. You know, he's everything that you want in a trench warrior. You're going to get an Ozzy Trapilo. This guy plays, you know, he's out there as much as I think he got hurt once in his 3 years. I can remember him starting. And other than that, he was out there, you know, taping things up, getting out there to play. And he was a warrior. This is a guy that did everything for BC.
And that's what I think that's what Bears fans like to hear. The trenches have been an issue in Chicago for a little bit, especially the offensive line. There's been a lot of movement. I've said this stat on a few podcasts. I want to say it's about 14 different line formations in the last 2 years, just between injuries, guys getting benched, trades happening, things just not working out. So they're kind of trying to find a way to solidify that. They make a lot of moves this offseason. They added Joe Tooney into it. They added Drew Dahlman, obviously drafting Ozzy Trapilo. And so there's a lot of pieces that they're hoping they finally completed this. So we will see with that. But I want to talk a little bit about the Boston College offense in general, especially this last season, because I do think that when you go from a Tommy Castellanos, who now is at Florida State, but there were flashes of him the year before that people thought that Tommy was going to continue to progress and develop. And there was a lot of things, a more mobile quarterback. So you expected that out of him. And then it switches over, and Grayson James, I believe it kind of immediately took over for Castellanos there at Boston College. But talk a little bit about that, what the offense looked like, what happened, what wasn't working with Tommy, and that switch and the different quarterbacks, how that looked.
Yeah, so this 2023, Thomas Castellanos beats out Emmett Moorhead to be the quarterback, and Jeff Hafley, who's now obviously the Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator, was the head coach of that. I know, right? BC fans would say the same thing, but you know, they tailored the offense to Castellanos. Like it was just a really gimmicky, like let him run, do his thing, and you know it worked. They won 6 games. They weren't really projected to win that many. It was fine. Jeff Hafley leaves. He goes to Green Bay again. They bring in Bill O'Brien. who worked with Bill Belichick. He's got a long history in the NFL. He brings in a pro style offense, and very, very pro style. He tries to teach Thomas Castellanos that offense. It doesn't work. Like Tommy's like 5'9", and making him into a pocket passer.
Mm-hmm.
Just you had moments where it looked okay, but all the things that made him explosive left. So that once he basically benched him, you got Grayson James, and you saw a style of offense that you would see in the NFL. James is not like Caleb Williams, but like he's a big guy. He's mobile. He can run. He's tough. But he can also throw the ball. So I think that style of offense really showcased what Trapilo can do. Really, you look at the month of November. That's the halftime of the Syracuse game. I think it was the first weekend in November, all the way through the bowl game. So that's 5 games. You watch what James could do in a pro style offense, in that offensive line. They kept him up. They were able to do things running and passing, and get that offense going much more consistently than when they had it with Castellanos. So I think that this is what Bill O'Brien pitches to every recruit that I've talked to. Mm-hmm. Is this pro style offense is going to get you ready for the NFL. No matter what position you play at, whether it's a quarterback, an offensive lineman, on that offense, we're going to get you ready. We're going to have you prepared for what you're going to face in the league. And he's a guy that knows it. He's done it. And so that I think will have Trapilo at a nice level. Like, it's so much more different than like some of the gimmicky offenses like you see at some of those other schools where they're playing like gadget plays and all these other things that really don't translate. Trapilo doesn't deal with a lot of that. He knows he can get up there and do everything that you would do in the NFL, and I think that's what's going to make him successful.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. I think Bears fans in general are curious of what this offense will look like. You have a new head coach / offensive play caller and Ben Johnson, who's been able to develop and kind of create schematically some very explosive offenses in Detroit, and some of the best offensive linemen we've seen also. And some of the crazy things he does with Penei Sewell that I'm not quite sure if he's going to be able to do that with some of the guys the Bears currently have on the roster. We will see. But when it comes to the versatility, that's another question. Obviously, you go back and you mentioned the ones he did play the first season, I believe, left tackle, and that was a season you said was not very good. Don't go back and watch that. And then the rest of the time, I think pretty much right tackle. He has said in Bears press conferences that he still would take reps at left tackle during practice because he wanted to keep that kind of fresh in his mind and be able to do it. Scouts and coaches and agents have told him the versatility is going to be important for him at the next level. So in your opinion, though, what does that look like for him? Do you truly think he could play right or left, or do you think it would be smart for the Bears to play him at right tackle?
I think he could play either. I do think, though, his home is at the right tackle position. I think he just has so much more experience there. Like, taking some reps at practice is one thing, but once you get into a game, like left tackle is like one of the most critical positions on the field, right? So, I'm sure if he was pushed into it, he'd work his tail off and get ready for that. But I do think when it comes down to it, he's probably going to find more success at right tackle because that's just the position he's worked at for 2 straight years, and he's seen the most reps there.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to me when you draft a player and it's like, oh, he played 98% of his reps at this position, but we're going to move him and see how it works. And a lot of times you don't see that work. And that's what's kind of fascinating. The Bears a couple seasons ago used a very high pick, the 9th pick, on Darnell Wright, who has been the right tackle. When they were drafting Darnell Wright, they had a lot of conversations that he could switch to left tackle. So we will see. I truly don't know what this offensive line is going to look like week 1, but I do like that there's options now because and valuable options, because I feel like previously it wasn't that. So when you're talking about Ozzy and just kind of his playing style, we hear a lot about his pass pro and how good he is in pass protection, which is obviously what you want to hear when it comes to some of the rushers coming from the outside. That's something you want to see him be able to come up against some of that competition and some of the better edge rushers. And that's what he's going to be facing, is several in the NFC North alone. So what do you think about that? Is there a part of his game that you think stands out the most to you? Would it be that pass pro? Would it be against some of the rushers? Is there enough tape on the run blocking side of it in your opinion?
Yeah, so my site writer, I got to shout out Mitch Wolf, who does all my scouting reports. He's a scout. And when I talked to him about Ozzy, he said the 2 things that really stood out to him is his strength. He's really, really strong. And he's good with his hands and his feet. So and that translates. And BC was able to run the ball really effectively, whether it was Castellanos 2 years ago or just more of the pro style run game this year. Whether it's zone runs or gap, whatever he's doing, he's been able to be effective there. Some of the issues that have popped up, more like leverage things. Sometimes he's so big that like leverage, sometimes when he goes against a small guy, has been a bit of a challenge for him at times. But looking at his strength, and a good offensive line coach can probably work with him to get that out. It's a smaller issue, but he has been really effective, both in the run and the pass, in a variety of, just because the way the pro style scheme worked at BC, they do a variety of different things. So no matter what scheme he gets into, he's going to be able to go back on some of the things that he's done in the past.
Let's talk about that comfortability level, because you mentioned the different type of playing style between the two quarterbacks when you went from Castellanos to Grayson James. And so now you get a Caleb Williams, who may be a little bit of a combo of the two. Caleb will move. He does a lot of off schedule, kind of quirky, fun, crazy things. We're hoping that Ben Johnson gets him a little bit more on track when it comes to not holding the ball so long and maybe getting, quicker release, some of those things. But Caleb has an arm. We saw it at USC. There was struggles of it last year. We're hoping that part of his game can open up. But how do you think Ozzy would be able to, with a different quarterback, like I said, a little bit of a combination of the two maybe, but in front of a guy who does a lot of stuff out of the pocket and a little crazy stuff?
I think he'll be okay. He's quick. He pulls. He does a lot of stuff where he's moving around. He's not like a guy that's just in his little bubble. Like, they move him around. They get him going. I think he'll be fine there. And watching James, who is a much bigger, like, he's sized a little bit more like Caleb Williams than Tommy was. Yeah. Tommy's tiny. But he moved around a lot too. Like, plays would break down. He'd run. He would do things off his feet too. And I thought Ozzy did great. I thought Ozzy, like, the offensive line, once Grayson James played, I thought did really well. So I'm looking at what, a guy like Caleb Williams, I could see Ozzy being fine in a system working with a quarterback like that. I think he'll be able to keep him on his feet. He's not going to get beat. And when things break down, he's a smart dude. He's not going to stand there and like freeze and not know what to do if things are breaking down around him. He's smart. He watches tape. He knows where he's supposed to be, and he'll make those plays to make sure that Williams can do the magic that he does.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but he definitely won over Bears fans pretty quickly, because he made some comment early on about not wanting Caleb to hit the ground and not be on his back. And that's something we saw a lot of. Obviously, almost 70 times he got sacked this last year, which you don't want anything close to that to be able to run a successful offense. It's impossible if you're getting hit or about to be hit that many times. I heard you say the word earlier when you were talking about Ozzy too, and you said the word leader. Is that something that you would identify him as, and just something that grew through his time at Boston College too, just kind of taking that leadership role on the offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, he started off quiet. I mean, there's always leaders in that offensive line room. That it's just something BC has done. Like, you talk about Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, things like that for their offensive line. BC's like right there with, not like right there, but they have brought good offensive line through the years. You've seen them come in and come out. And so they've always had leaders. But when it was Ozzy's turn to do it, he went from more of a quieter offensive lineman that kind of followed what the leaders in that room were doing to the leader. He took over that room last year. You would talk to him at press conferences, and you could tell he took a responsibility for things that weren't going right, for making sure guys knew what they were supposed to be doing, and really like just being the glue for that room. So I thought that piece of his growth was very, very clear from, a couple years ago to his final year in Chestnut Hill.
Was this spot, the second round, 56th pick, is that about where you guys were expecting him to go in this draft?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I heard, talking to some folks, I heard late second round, early third round.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious, because this draft was interesting, because I feel like there were, when it came to offensive linemen, there were the few that were very high that people were expecting to go in the top 15. And then there was a cluster of guys that you weren't quite sure. It was late first round to late second round that you were kind of expecting them to go. And Ozzy, I know, was in the mix of a lot of those names. Gray Zabel, who kind of sprouted up during the Senior Bowl, and some of those other names we started seeing spike up a little bit. But do you know, like, his reaction? Has he talked at all to reporters there? Has anybody talked to him about being drafted by the Bears? His feelings towards that?
No, not really. We haven't had a chance to catch him. the way the BC works is we're a smaller school, and
Yeah.
we don't keep up with like the Big Ten in terms of like media coverage. And
Yeah.
I mean, I cover them. I would love to have more opportunities. It's just
Yeah.
quieter, so we didn't really get a chance to talk to him after. All I've been able to hear is what you've heard with the Bears.
Yeah.
And I don't want to repeat all that. So
Yeah, which it seems like he's ready to go. He seems like one of the
totally.
guys who he's already, I think the day he was drafted, it was like, all right, I'm ready to get on the field, which I think Bears fans enjoy. Before I let you go, I do want to ask you one question, because I did mention off air a little bit that I do work in Jacksonville also. So we talk a lot about the Seminoles. What are your thoughts with Castellanos being at Florida State now? Like, I'm like, I don't know if this was the best decision for them, but I guess we'll see.
So I've come around on this. I'm going to be kinder than I was about 6 months ago, because he kind of quit the team, and that was put BC in a really weird spot.
Yeah.
He got benched. Grayson James took over. Tommy entered the portal the next day, like just left.
Yeah.
So a lot of BC fans don't want to hear much about him. That being said, I think two things. He wasn't a good fit for BC under Bill O'Brien. Like, Bill O'Brien's offense was just not going to work for him.
Yeah.
I get that. The other piece is I do think Gus Malzahn, his offense will be a better fit for him. And I heard someone say, and I was talking to somebody about this, I forget what podcast I was on, that he has a hot, it was Bud Elliott. Bud Elliott was saying he's got a high floor and a low ceiling. Like, you know what you're going to get with him. He can't throw. Like, he cannot throw. And the only way he gets the ball out is if he scrambles a bit. And he got a little he got a little bit, he just got in his own head a little bit last year, and it just, his explosiveness left. I think he'll be fine. I think if he stays healthy, the one piece with him is he's tiny. Like, he can't take, like Caleb Williams he got, as you said, he got hit so many times last year, right? Yeah. If Tommy took that, he'd be out for weeks, because he's just not the same size. Like, there's a reason he was recruited as a running back by FSU, Georgia, like all these schools wanted him because he's explosive. I think he'll find success. I'm really, really interested to watch that Alabama game in the beginning, because I want to see, like, Florida State's like, putting Band-Aids all over all sorts of issues going on here. Can they fix that? And will he be able to do that? I think it's going to be an interesting watch, and to see what he can do. Yeah,
it will. And I know Florida State fans are very frustrated with Norvell, with the way that things went this last year. So we've been talking a lot about that. But what kind of brought it up is some of the odds of the game win totals came out today, and they had Florida State, I think, at 8.5. And we were all kind of like, hold on, what? So we will see. Like I said, there were flashes in Tommy that I liked, but you have to be able to get him going on the ground is pretty much what you have to do.
And if Florida State fans, I think a lot of them are going off of the 2 games he played against Florida State where the Seminoles couldn't stop him. You got to watch like Virginia last year, where he just couldn't do anything. There are times I think the film kind of caught up to him, but he's got the talent to be explosive. I can say that. And if he can get it going with really good, I think he'll have really good weapons around him. He's in a pretty good offensive line, hopefully. Maybe he'll find some of that magic again.
Yeah, I think at this point they're just hoping that he's better than DJ Uyunglele, because that didn't go well at all. All right, AJ. Well, I really appreciate your time, and we're really excited to keep following on with Ozzy. We'll see if he's the day one starter. The potential's high there.
I know Boston College fans really want to see him be successful, so we'll all be watching Bears games to see how he's doing.
We love it. We love new fans, or at least people that are watching. So I appreciate it, and you have a good rest of your week.
All right, thanks, Taylor.
Thanks.